Picture this. You're sitting completely alone in a quiet room,
Right.
and it's late. Well past the hour when the rest of the world has just surrendered to sleep.
That heavy kind of late night silence.
Exactly. The only sound in the entire space is that low, constant, almost imperceptible hum of a refrigerator somewhere in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It's this mechanical drone that, well, it somehow makes the silence feel even heavier. And the room is totally dark, except for this harsh, unyielding blue-white glare of a device illuminating your face.
We all know that glow.
Yeah, we really do. And on that glowing screen is a ledger. It's your financial reality, just laid bare in these stark lines, rigid columns, diminishing balances.
Oof. Yeah.
Right? And you can feel the reaction in your body like a fraction of a second before your conscious brain even fully processes the severity of those numbers.
It's entirely physical first.
It really is. It begins as this sudden, icy tightening right in the center of your chest, almost as if an invisible hand has just reached in and, gripped your rib cage.
Yeah, your whole physiology
Yeah.
shifts.
Your breathing fundamentally changes. It goes from this deep expansion of your diaphragm to these short, panicked bursts at the very top of your lungs.
You're suffocating on the anxiety of it.
Completely. And then there's this overwhelming primal urge building right in your fingertips to just quickly close the tab, to swipe away, to escape the acute discomfort and pretend the screen is just blank again.
Because in that precise moment, you're staring at an external reality that feels so heavy, right? It feels immovable.
Immovable, hostile, and just completely indifferent to your suffering.
It really is a universally understood modern moment.
Yeah.
I mean, what you just described so vividly, that's the exact intersection where human biology collides with abstract reality.
You're right.
The visceral reaction, the tightened chest, the shallow breathing, the urge to just flee, that is your autonomic nervous system responding to a perceived immediate threat.
Like a survival instinct.
Exactly like a survival instinct. But the fascinating part here is that the threat isn't, it's not a predator lurking in the brush waiting to strike.
No, it's pixels on a screen.
Right. It's a reflection of circumstances that feel entirely outside of your control. And what do we instinctively do in that quiet room when the panic hits?
We tense up.
We brace ourselves. Yeah. We tense up every single muscle, literally and metaphorically, and we prepare to fight the outside world. We prepare to just force a change.
And that is the core agonizing frustration, isn't it? I mean, if you are listening to this right now, chances are you've experienced that exact room or, a version of it.
Almost certainly.
And you have likely tried absolutely everything to force a change in those external circumstances. You've consumed a vast constellation of advice.
The endless books, the seminars.
All of it. You've tried forcing these new, rigid habits into your daily routine, waking up before the sun, grinding through pure exhaustion.
Hustle culture at its finest.
Right, just attempting with sheer, unrelenting willpower to bend the outside world to your desires. And yet, despite all that exhausting, back-breaking effort, you remain entirely stuck.
The needle doesn't move.
Not a millimeter. It feels exactly like you are pressing your bare hands against a solid brick wall, pushing with all the might you can muster, and the wall it isn't moving a single fraction of an inch.
You're just draining your own batteries.
Utterly exhausted, your energy is completely depleted, but nothing is shifting.
Well, what's incredibly profound here is the radical philosophical shift we need to make to actually understand why that brick wall isn't moving.
Okay.
What if the sheer agonizing effort of trying to alter the external world is exactly the mechanism that keeps it locked in place?
Wait, really? The effort itself?
Yes. What if the struggle itself, the friction of your pushing, is the very glue holding your current uncomfortable reality together?
Wow. Okay, so welcome to our exploration today. We are going to look at a fascinating constellation of concepts here, drawing from cognitive psychology, behavioral conditioning, and these really profound philosophical frameworks.
It's a massive paradigm shift.
It is. And our mission today is to chart a completely different path out of that dark room. We are going to examine a framework where true reality shaping doesn't happen by wrestling with outside forces.
No forcing required.
Right. Or by burning yourself out, trying to manually rearrange the furniture of your life. It happens by mastering the internal landscape.
That's the key.
And we're talking directly to you today. This entire conversation is designed specifically for you to help you navigate from feeling totally overwhelmed by those external pressures to becoming the absolute, unquestioned architect of your own experience.
It's entirely within your grasp.
So where do we even begin to dismantle this brick wall we've been pushing against?
Well, we begin by completely redefining the nature of reality itself.
Okay, that's a big place to start.
It is, but it's the foundation. The core concept of our entire exploration is that the external world, the ledger glowing on the screen, the specific circumstances of your career, the intricate dynamics of your personal relationships, all of it is, in a very specific sense, merely an illusion.
An illusion. Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure. It is a direct, unfiltered, and delayed reflection of your internal frequency and your underlying consciousness.
I see.
As a society, we've been heavily conditioned to view the outside world as the undeniable cause and our internal emotional state as the unavoidable effect.
Right, like when the ledger looks good, then I'll finally feel secure.
Exactly. That's how we're taught to think. But the framework we're exploring posits that it is entirely the reverse.
The complete opposite.
Yes. True transformation is defined as an internal shift so profound, so deeply anchored within your nervous system, that you are no longer emotionally dependent upon seeing the external reality change in order to feel secure.
I have to stop you there.
Go for it.
Because I can hear people listening to this right now and immediately thinking, well, easy for you to say, but my rent isn't an illusion.
Of course.
My landlord doesn't accept emotional currency, and my utility bill is a very physical, very real piece of paper.
That's the natural, immediate reaction.
Right. So how do we bridge this massive gap between a deep internal philosophy and the very real physical demands of a modern Tuesday morning? Are we just supposed to, pretend these physical realities don't exist?
No, not at all. That's the most important pushback, and it's so crucial we clarify the terminology here.
Please do.
When we use a word like illusion, we are not saying the rent isn't due. We aren't saying that the utility bill lacks physical weight. We are saying that the solid nature of those things is an end product. It's not the point of origin.
Okay, an end product.
Think of it through a physics-inspired analogy, right? The relationship between steam and ice.
Okay, steam and ice, I'm following.
They are the exact same fundamental essence. They are both simply water, but they are vibrating at entirely different rates. They're operating at different temperatures.
Right, the molecules are moving differently.
Exactly. When you look at a block of ice, it's solid, immovable, cold, and hard. If you run into it, it bruises you.
Yeah.
That is your rent. That is the physical ledger.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, when you look at steam, it's ethereal, expanding, hot, and formless. Reality and imagination operate on that exact same continuum.
So reality is the ice.
Reality is simply materialized consciousness. It is the ice. Consciousness, or your internal state, is immaterial reality. It is the steam.
They are the exact same energy.
Exactly the same energy.
Yeah.
So when we say the external world is an illusion, we just mean it is frozen steam.
Frozen steam. Okay, let me make sure I'm mapping this correctly. My internal state is the steam, and over time, it freezes into the solid ice of my daily life.
You've got it.
So when I am staring at that screen in the dark, begging the numbers to be different so I can finally exhale, relax, and just feel safe, what is actually happening energetically in that moment?
What is happening is the paradox of emotional dependency.
Meaning what, exactly?
When you desperately need the external world to change in order for you to feel okay, you are perpetually vibrating at a state of lack.
Because you're saying, I don't have it.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Your internal temperature is fundamentally set to absence. You are signaling to your own nervous system, and by extension, the reality around you, that you do not have what you need.
And the universe is listening.
And reality, acting as a dutiful, unbiased, and incredibly accurate mirror, simply reflects that exact absence right back to you.
Oh, wow.
It takes your frequency of lack, and it dutifully freezes it into solid ice. It materializes a reality where you continue to lack.
So my very desperation is the precise temperature keeping the water frozen in that exact uncomfortable shape.
That's it. That's the trap.
But again, it's incredibly hard to just quote-unquote not care when the physical world is loudly demanding your attention. Bills demand to be paid. Crises demand energy.
They do.
How do we distinguish between genuine internal peace and just cynically pretending we don't care while, secretly hoping the universe rewards or pretending with a lottery win?
That is the trap of behavioral masquerading.
Behavioral masquerading.
Right. Pretending not to care is still an action deeply rooted in a desire to manipulate the external world.
Because you're only pretending so that you'll get the reward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is still a frequency of lack, just dressed up in a really clever costume of indifference.
And your nervous system knows the difference.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't trick your own biology. Genuine internal peace is cultivated entirely independently of the external.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Imagine trying to catch that steam we talked about with your bare hands.
All right.
You see the vapor rising, and you want to hold it.
Hmm.
You really want to possess it. So you reach out and you grasp wildly. You close your fist as tightly as you can.
Which obviously doesn't work.
Right. The harder you grasp, the more the steam just slips relentlessly through your fingers. It is physically impossible to capture it through sheer force.
Because the force itself creates a disturbance in the air that just pushes the steam away.
Precisely. You're creating your own resistance. However, if you simply stop grasping and instead change the temperature of the room, if you alter the underlying environment, the steam naturally condenses into water. And then you can hold it effortlessly in the palm of your hand.
That's a beautiful image.
Your internal emotional state is the temperature of the room. When you master your internal temperature, when you genuinely regulate your nervous system to a state of calm abundance, regardless of the ledger, the external reality naturally condenses into the shape of your new frequency.
And you do that without ever having to forcefully grasp at it.
Exactly. No force required.
That is a stunning way to look at it. If I change the temperature of my own consciousness, the steam of my imagination naturally condenses into a reality I can actually hold.
You become the master of the environment.
But okay, that brings up a massive glaring dilemma for me.
What's that?
If mastering the internal temperature is the ultimate key to this whole process, why do we make it so incredibly complicated?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why do we build these massive labyrinthine systems of self-help, these rigorous, punishing daily routines, and these complex philosophies, if the answer is fundamentally just adjusting the internal thermostat?
Well, that leads us directly into the hidden traps we meticulously set for ourselves.
We do it to ourselves.
We absolutely do. We fall headfirst into the complexity trap.
The complexity trap.
Yes. The entrenched belief that transformation must be an arduous, difficult, intellectually grueling process is precisely what creates the difficulty.
Oh, I see.
We have this inherited societal notion that anything truly valuable must require immense suffering, complex deciphering, and endless struggle.
No pain, no gain?
Exactly. So, to feel like we are making legitimate progress, we begin to acquire an endless tide of knowledge. We read a vast constellation of books, we listen to countless theories, we attend endless seminars,
Stockpiling information.
and stockpile it without ever actually developing conviction. And this leads to a massive state of analysis paralysis.
Which just freezes us.
It slowly, quietly, and completely strips away our innate power.
So how does acquiring knowledge, which, you're usually taught is a universally good thing, actually work against us in this specific context? What is the actual mechanism there?
To understand that, we really have to explore the psychological entity of a belief.
Okay.
We usually think of beliefs as just passive thoughts we happen to hold in our heads, like items sitting on a shelf.
Right, just data.
But from a cognitive standpoint, beliefs are actually active, protective entities. They are living, breathing architectures that occupy prime mental real estate.
They defend their territory?
Highly defensive. Like any occupant of a valuable piece of land, a belief wants to protect its territory at all costs. It does this through cognitive biases.
So if I believe it's hard,
If you hold a subconscious belief that changing your life is a magical, complex, nearly impossible puzzle that requires 1,000 steps, that belief will actively defend its existence. Your subconscious mind will dutifully materialize confusion. It will seek out contradictory advice and drag you into convoluted situations just to prove your underlying belief right.
just to validate the struggle.
It will ensure you experience immense difficulty so that your belief in difficulty remains perfectly validated.
It is the ultimate, inescapable, self-fulfilling prophecy. Your brain just filters out the simple solutions because a simple solution would fundamentally threaten the belief that life is hard.
It's self-sabotage by design.
This reminds me of a very specific archetype. The tragedy of the eternal student.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the exact type of person I mean. They are incredibly smart, always reading the next groundbreaking book, always signing up for the next masterclass.
Always getting ready to be ready.
Exactly. They absorb a vast expanse of theories, but the more they learn, the more they realize how much they don't know.
Yep.
And instead of that being a humbling, empowering realization that frees them to finally act, It completely erodes their internal conviction.
Because the options are too vast.
They become totally paralyzed by the sheer volume of methodologies available to them. They can't take a single step because they are terrified it isn't the mathematically optimal step.
That is a perfect illustration. Because it is conviction, not the volume of knowledge, that actually activates a change in your reality.
Conviction over knowledge.
An endless tide of unanchored theoretical knowledge simply washes away your foundational confidence. You end up drowning in variables.
Right.
But a solitary spark of pure, unadulterated conviction can ignite an entire forest. When you possess pure conviction, you don't need 1,000 complex steps.
You don't need a manual.
You don't need a perfectly optimized morning routine. You only need the unwavering certainty of your own internal state.
I always picture this dynamic like playing a classic vintage arcade game.
Okay, tell me more.
Imagine a highly complex fighting game with a massive constellation of different button combinations.
Like one of those ones where you have to memorize a 30-button combo to do a special move?
Exactly. So a seasoned player steps up to the machine. They know every single theory, every frame rate, every complex counterattack.
They've studied the game.
But because their head is so entirely full of variables, they overthink their strategy in the heat of the moment. They hesitate for a mere fraction of a second, just trying to decide which of the optimal moves to deploy.
And that hesitation is lethal.
Right. Because of that hesitation, they freeze and they lose. Then a complete beginner walks up to the exact same machine. They don't know any of the rules. They haven't read the manual.
They're totally blank slates.
They possess a mind entirely without limitations. They just pick up the controller, press the buttons with joyful, unburdened abandon, and they miraculously win.
They just mash the buttons.
Yeah, because they operate with pure conviction and absolute zero complexity.
That is the legendary power of the beginner's mind. The beginner hasn't yet inherited the deeply ingrained belief the game is impossibly difficult.
They haven't been taught to fear it yet.
Exactly. They haven't absorbed the collective anxiety, the lore, and the perceived limitations of the seasoned players. They're just interacting with the reality directly.
Which is so much more effective.
It is. And this raises a deeply important question for our exploration. Where do we get these complex limiting beliefs in the first place?
Right.
Because this profound loss of conviction doesn't just happen in a vacuum. And it doesn't just happen from reading too much philosophy. It happens because we are constantly, subconsciously inheriting the fears, the perceived boundaries, and the rigid limitations of the people around us.
We're born into an architecture of limits that we absolutely didn't design.
We really are.
We basically move into a house built by other people's anxieties.
That's a great way to put it. And the profound, liberating truth you must recognize is that the limitations of others do not belong to you unless you subconsciously reach out and accept them.
Unless you sign the lease on that house.
Exactly. Societal norms, industry standards, the collective fears of your peers, the historical data of what is, quote-unquote, possible, these are all merely half-truths.
Half-truths. I love that phrasing.
They only become real, solid ice in your personal world if you grant them the internal permission to freeze.
That is brilliant. It implies they are completely true for the person experiencing them, but they are absolutely not universal laws of physics.
Not at all.
Let's ground this. Let's look at how this invisible inheritance actually plays out in the real world. Think about the intense realm of elite athletics.
Okay.
An athlete reaches the absolute highest echelon of their sport. Now, the accepted truth of that specific environment, the collective, unquestioned belief of the coaches, the sports media, the veteran players, is that a newcomer must sit quietly on the sidelines.
They have to wait their turn.
They must wait for the passage of a prior era. They must pay their dues before they are deemed ready to truly compete.
It's an ingrained culture.
But occasionally, an athlete arrives who simply rejects that inherited limit. They don't internalize the half-truth. By refusing the limitation, by not allowing that belief to take up mental real estate, they step immediately onto the field and utterly dominate.
Bypassing the whole queue.
Bypassing the entire waiting period that everyone else had solemnly agreed was a mandatory law of nature.
Because they refuse to let the collective belief occupy their internal temperature.
Exactly.
We see this phenomena in absolutely every discipline. Consider a master cultivator, an agricultural expert who oversees a vast expanse of land.
Okay, a farming example.
Right. The entire collective industry, generations of accumulated wisdom, neighboring farmers, historical data, tells this cultivator that certain cycles of the year are universally destined to be barren.
The off-season.
It is an accepted, unquestioned limitation that the land must lie dormant and unprofitable during specific harsh seasons. But this solitary cultivator refuses to accept the seasonal limitation.
They don't buy into the collective fear.
No, they do not internalize the industry's historical fear. Because they reject that boundary internally, they experiment, they adapt, and their land thrives continuously, completely breaking the supposed rules of nature that everyone else had obediently bowed down to.
I love those examples of breaking the
Yeah.
mold. It's inspiring. But here is where it gets incredibly tense.
Wow.
Because the reverse of this mechanism is also terrifyingly true. If you do accept the limitation, you actively manifest the destruction.
Yes, that's the dark side of it.
There is a classic cautionary story we explored in our preparation for this about a highly successful self-made baker.
Ah, yes, the baker.
This baker built a thriving, robust, incredibly popular enterprise entirely from scratch. They relied on their own intuition, their connection to their craft, and their pure internal conviction.
They were the master of their own steam.
Exactly. But as the business grows into a vast empire, the baker decides to send their child away to be educated in the highest, most prestigious, complex financial philosophies available.
Seeking external complexity.
Right. So the child goes away, absorbs a vast constellation of complex economic models, historical market forecasts, and rigid theories, and returns to the bakery with a dire warning.
A forecast of doom.
The child tells the baker that an inevitable, crushing economic collapse is on the horizon. The math guarantees it. The global experts all agree.
It's all very convincing.
Very. Now, the baker deeply respects the child's new, shiny expertise. The baker values this complex external knowledge over the very internal conviction that built the bakery in the first place.
They defer to the expert.
So the baker accepts the limitation. They pull back their investments. They stop innovating. They begin to operate entirely from a frequency of fear and contraction.
Which changes everything.
And subsequently, the once thriving business completely and utterly collapses.
It's tragic.
Now, wait. Here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to play devil's advocate here because my mind is flashing red flags.
Let's hear it.
Are we really saying the baker failed just because he believed a negative forecast? I mean, isn't it incredibly dangerous and frankly just terrible business advice to ignore actual, measurable economic data?
It sounds reckless, right?
It does. If a severe market downturn is genuinely coming, pretending it's an illusion won't save your bakery. You have to prepare, don't you?
That is the exact nuance we need to dissect. There's a monumental difference between practical, grounded preparation and operating from a frequency of fear.
Okay, draw that line for me.
Practical preparation is neutral. It is looking at the weather forecast, seeing rain, and deciding to carry an umbrella.
Okay.
Your internal temperature remains totally calm. You are still moving forward. But the baker didn't just carry an umbrella. The baker completely changed their fundamental frequency.
They panic.
They stopped baking with joy. They stopped serving their community with abundance. They internalized the panic. They accepted the belief that ruin was inevitable. And in doing so, they actively dismantled their own foundation. The baker literally manifested their own ruin by agreeing with a pessimistic theory and letting it dictate their internal state. They fulfilled the inherited prophecy.
That's chilling.
It illustrates the extreme danger of seeking validation from experts or authority figures regarding your own ultimate potential.
You essentially hand over the keys to your own house.
Precisely. When you ask the external world for permission to succeed, or when you constantly seek confirmation that your chosen path is viable, it is a glaring neon admission that you lack your own internal conviction.
You don't trust your own steam.
You are taking the pristine architect's blueprints of your own life and literally handing them over to someone else's unexamined fears.
That is a staggering thought. I mean, how often are we walking around every single day wearing clothes that are perfectly, meticulously tailored to fit someone else's fears?
Every single day.
We shrink our ambitions to fit the anxieties of our parents. We modify our behavior to appease the cynics in our industry. We assume that their limitations are universal laws of gravity when they are just, inherited phobias.
It is a profound tragedy of the human experience. But the beautiful part is that it is entirely reversible.
Thank goodness.
You simply have to recognize the mechanism and stop asking the external world for permission to alter your internal state.
Right.
However, we must address the next logical hurdle.
Which is?
Rejecting the theoretical fears of others is only the first step. It is relatively easy to ignore the pessimistic economic forecast of a university student.
Sure, that's just a theory.
Exactly. It is an entirely different, vastly more intimidating challenge when the fear is not theoretical. What happens when the fear is staring you right in the face from your own life?
When the rent really is due tomorrow.
Yes. What happens when the reality you have already materialized is deeply, painfully uncomfortable?
Right. This brings us all the way back to the hook of our conversation. We are back in that quiet, dark room, staring at the harsh blue glare of the depleted ledger.
Back to the ice.
It's not a theory anymore. It is a very uncomfortable, very tangible present reality. The ice is already frozen solid, and it's sitting right in our lap, freezing our skin.
Yeah.
How do we apply this beginner's mind and this internal temperature control when we are actively in the middle of a crisis?
The cardinal, unbreakable rule of this framework is that you must never, ever avoid or ignore your current reality.
You can't just swipe away.
You cannot.
Yeah.
There's a fatal, widespread misconception in modern self-help, often associated with toxic positivity or superficial manifestation, that creating a better life means burying your head in the sand.
Pretending the bad things simply aren't happening.
Exactly. But neurologically and energetically, running from a problem only strengthens its hold on you.
Why is that?
When you avoid the uncomfortable reality, when you close that tab in a panic, you are signaling to your subconscious mind, and by extension the reflective universe, that the problem is vastly more powerful than you are.
Oh, because you're fleeing from it.
Right. You are confirming with absolute certainty that you are at the mercy of this external circumstance. To neutralize the threat, you must do the exact opposite.
Which is?
You must confront the discomfort directly. You must engage in what we call the stare down.
The stare down. I can feel the tension of that just thinking about it.
It's intense.
Let's walk through that gruesome but absolutely necessary process. Let's break down the mechanics of the stare down.
Okay.
You are sitting there with the ledger. The biological instinct, driven by a flood of cortisol, is to close the tab and flee.
Run away.
But instead, you force your hands away from the keyboard, you plant your feet firmly on the floor, and you just stare directly at the screen.
You hold your ground.
You let the physical sensations happen. Your heart is racing, pounding against your ribs. Your palms are sweating. Your mind is screaming at you, offering 100 different distractions.
Check your phone, get a snack.
Yes, but you refuse to look away. You watch those numbers until your vision blurs slightly. You sit in the heavy, suffocating silence of that room.
It takes endurance.
You don't try to frantically calculate how to change the numbers. You don't try to artificially chant happy thoughts to drown out the fear. You just look at the reality until the emotional charge, the sheer terror of it, entirely evaporates.
That is a masterful description of the precise mechanism. What you are doing in that room is executing what we can categorize as the 3 T's.
The 3 T's. Let's hear them.
Transcend, transmute, transform. This is deeply rooted in the psychology of exposure therapy and nervous system regulation.
Okay, so first, transcend.
First, you transcend the primal instinct to flee. You stay entirely present with the threat. By staring at the source of your anxiety without flinching, without trying to change it, you begin to transmute the energy.
How does the transmutation happen?
The energy of fear relies entirely on your active resistance to sustain itself. It feeds on your struggle.
Like pushing the brick wall.
Exactly. When you stop resisting, when you stop pushing against the brick wall and simply observe the wall, the fear burns itself out.
It runs out of fuel.
The amygdala in your brain eventually realizes you are not actually being eaten by a lion, and it stops sending the alarm signal.
That makes total sense.
This profound realization leads us to a critical error many people make when trying to improve their lives, which is falling into the trap of toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity.
Yeah.
Trying to slap a brightly colored good vibes only sticker over a deep bleeding wound.
Exactly. Toxic positivity is the desperate attempt to leap directly from a state of deep, paralyzing anxiety straight into a state of euphoric joy and abundance.
Which feels impossible.
It requires an impossible Herculean amount of energetic force to swing the emotional pendulum that far, that fast. And more importantly, your subconscious mind violently rebels against it because your nervous system knows it's a lie.
You can't trick it.
You cannot affirm your way out of a state of sheer terror. The brain will just create massive cognitive dissonance. Instead, the goal of the stare down is not to feel happy.
It's not.
No. The goal is simply to arrive at a state of pure, unadulterated neutrality.
Neutral.
You look at the ledger until it is no longer a threat. It is no longer a monster in the dark. It is just a series of illuminated pixels on a glass screen.
It doesn't mean anything about me.
Right. It means nothing about your worth or your future. It just is. Only from that calm, level shore of neutrality can you safely and authentically begin to step toward a positive state.
You have to level out first.
You have to completely empty the glass of dirty water before you can even begin to fill it with clean water. Neutrality is the empty glass.
That makes so much sense. You can't escape your problems because you take your own internal temperature with you wherever you go.
Exactly.
Trying to avoid the ledger is like, well, it's like trying to outrun your own shadow at high noon.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. The faster you run, the more frantically you sprint, the more tightly it clings to your heels. It is always right there.
You can't shake it.
The only way to effectively deal with the shadow is to stop running, turn around, face the sun directly, and let the shadow fall behind you where it belongs. You stand perfectly still in the discomfort until the panic subsides into neutrality.
That is a brilliant, poetic way to conceptualize the nervous system's journey to baseline.
Thank you.
Once you have faced the sun, once you've endured the stare down and neutralized the terror of the present moment, reaching that state of calm, empty neutrality, you unlock the final, most profound stage of mastering your reality.
What's the final stage?
Once the glass is empty, you gain access to a tool that literally bends the cycle of time itself. We refer to this mechanism as negative gratitude.
Okay, hold on. Let me make sure I'm mapping this correctly, because negative gratitude sounds like a total oxymoron.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Gratitude is usually the emotion we reserve for the good stuff. It is the reward at the end of the journey. How does gratitude bend time, and what exactly makes it negative?
It is termed negative only in the sense that you are applying the frequency of gratitude to a seemingly negative or painful external situation.
Okay.
The core mind-bending premise is this: having profound, genuine gratitude for a hardship while you are actively in the middle of experiencing it signals to your consciousness and your nervous system that the hardship has already been overcome.
That is truly mind-bending, because the normal human operating system waits for the passage of an era.
We always wait.
We grit our teeth, we hunker down, we survive the hardship, we endure the struggle with white knuckles, and then much later we look back and say, wow, I am so grateful for that difficult time because it forged my character. It made me who I am today.
We wait for the proof.
Right. We strictly reserve the gratitude for the finish line once we are safe.
We do that because we are deeply, inextricably entrenched in the illusion of linear time. We believe time is a rigid, straight line moving predictably from past to present to future.
One step after another.
We believe the future must be painstakingly, physically built through sequential, exhausting effort. But from the perspective of consciousness, and increasingly, from the perspective of predictive coding in neuroscience, your brain is constantly predicting the future based on your current emotional state.
So if I'm afraid now,
If you are locked in fear, your brain predicts more threats. But by actively blessing the difficulty in the present moment, by deliberately cultivating a profound sense of gratitude for the lesson and the growth while the storm is still actively raging around you, you neurologically collapse time.
you collapse time.
You prove to your internal landscape that you have already transcended the event.
Yeah.
You are broadcasting the emotional signature of a survivor, of a victor.
You're acting from the finish line.
Exactly. And because the external world must dutifully mirror the internal frequency, the adversity simply dissolves. It loses its structural integrity because it has served its purpose instantly.
So let's bring this back to the room. If I am staring at that depleted ledger and I have successfully executed the stare down and I have reached that flat line of neutrality, yes.
The next step isn't just to cross my fingers and hope for an influx of money.
No.
The next step is to actively generate a deep, genuine feeling of gratitude for the exact uncomfortable state of my finances in that very second.
It feels counterintuitive, but yes.
I feel grateful for the stark clarity it brings. I feel grateful for the undeniable resilience it is currently forging in my character. And by doing that, by feeling the gratitude now, I am essentially telling my own brain and the reflective universe, I've already learned this lesson. The purpose of this pain is complete. You can take the pop quiz off my desk now.
Precisely. You are fundamentally shifting your frequency from the contraction of a victim of circumstance to the expansion of a master of the experience.
That shifts the whole dynamic.
And this brings us to the ultimate crowning realization about what it is we are actually trying to achieve when we try to change our reality.
What's that?
When we are stuck in that room, stressing over the ledger, We genuinely think we desire physical money. We think we desire the literal numbers on the screen to change.
Of course we do. But we do not actually desire physical objects or external circumstances or even specific people. We exclusively desire the internal frequency or the specific emotional feeling that we believe those external objects will finally provide us.
Oh, this is so universally true in our everyday lives, even in the smallest, most mundane moments.
Give me an example.
Think about the tiniest, almost irrational desires. Why do you crave the crisp, clean snap of opening a fresh, completely untouched notebook?
Right.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the physical properties of paper or binding. It is a desperate, visceral craving for order, for a fresh start, for a feeling of control over a deeply chaotic life.
That's a perfect example.
Or why do you love the intoxicating smell of a brand new pair of shoes or the specific tactile feeling of sliding into the driver's seat of a luxury car? It isn't about the leather or the stitching or the horsepower.
No, it's never about the object itself.
It is the relentless pursuit of feeling elevated. It is the desire to feel secure, to feel admired, and to feel validated by the world around you. We're always constantly chasing a feeling, and we are just using physical objects as the clumsy middlemen.
It is a profound realization. When you desperately want something in the external world, you are really just trying to plug an emotional hole in your internal world.
But it's hard.
You are currently experiencing a lack of a certain frequency, let's say, the frequency of security, and your logical brain has deduced that acquiring a specific physical object, like a large sum of money, is the only acceptable way to generate that frequency of security.
But as we established at the very beginning with the steam and the ice, the external world is the reflection, not the point of origin.
Exactly. If you wait for the physical object to arrive before you allow yourself to feel the feeling, you remain dependent upon the illusion. You remain permanently stuck in a state of lack, which the universe continues to mirror.
Because you're still saying, I don't have it yet.
The ultimate defining secret of the master architect is to cultivate the feeling entirely independently first.
Feel it first.
If you desire security, you must generate the absolute, unshakable frequency of security within your own nervous system right now, in the quiet room, staring at the depleted ledger.
It all comes back to the temperature of the room.
When you cultivate the frequency of security first, the universe is mechanically compelled to condense the steam into the objects and circumstances that match that frequency.
You don't have to chase them.
You no longer have to exhaust yourself chasing them down. They gravitate to you naturally because you are already broadcasting their exact essence.
I am struck by how entirely backward we live our lives. We play the entire game in reverse.
We really do.
We wait for the object to give us the feeling. We act like the universe is a giant cosmic vending machine that takes physical currency.
Put the coin in, get the feeling out.
Right. We try to put our hard work, our stress, our physical exhaustion, and our endless hours into the slot, furiously pressing the buttons, expecting the feeling of peace to finally drop out at the bottom.
But it doesn't work that way.
The universe doesn't operate on physical effort. It only accepts emotional currency. If you want to experience peace in your life, you have to deposit the frequency of peace right now. If you want to experience abundance, you have to deposit the feeling of abundance even while the ledger is empty.
It is the ultimate reversal of how we are conditioned to operate from childhood.
Yeah.
And because it goes against every societal instinct, it requires immense, profound courage.
It really does.
It requires the courage to sit quietly in the agonizing discomfort of the stare down. It requires the audacity to reject the heavy limitations inherited from generations of fearful people.
Refusing the half-truths.
Yes, and it requires the humility to stand firmly in the joyful, unburdened power of the beginner's mind, trusting implicitly that your internal conviction is vastly, infinitely more powerful than any external circumstance you currently face.
This has been an absolutely incredible, perspective-altering journey today.
It's a lot to process, but it's transformative.
Let's trace our steps back. We started by sitting in that quiet, dimly lit room, staring at a glowing screen in a state of absolute panic, utterly exhausted from trying to force the heavy, immovable physical world to bend to our will.
Pushing the brick wall.
Pushing the wall. And step by meticulous step, we learned to soften the solid, bruising ice of our current reality back into the pliable, expansive steam of our own consciousness.
Changing the temperature.
We explored the trap of complexity, and we embraced the joyful, unburdened power of the beginner's mind, shedding the endless tide of overcomplicated theories that cause analysis paralysis.
Stop reading the manual and just play the game.
Exactly. We examined how incredibly dangerous it is to wear the heavy armor of inherited limitations, and we realized that seeking external permission is just a betrayal of our own internal power.
Don't let someone else's fear build your house.
We practiced the grueling but liberating mechanics of the stare down, learning to confront our deepest fears without flinching until they burn themselves out into a state of pure, clean neutrality.
Emptying the glass.
And finally, we uncovered the ultimate secret. Learning to bend time itself through the immediate application of negative gratitude, realizing that the universe only ever responds to the emotional currency we are willing to spend in the present moment.
As you move forward from this conversation, it is vital to recognize that the nature of the human journey itself guarantees there will be detours.
Oh, for sure.
The external world will not suddenly become a placid lake. It will continually attempt to shake you. It will present you with compelling half-truths and terrifying optical illusions designed specifically to test the integrity of your conviction.
It will try to freeze again.
You will, inevitably, stumble back into old, familiar patterns of fear and contraction. That is simply the rhythm of the human experience.
It's part of the process.
But so long as your internal destination remains absolutely fixed, so long as you remember that you are the architect, the observer, and the ultimate temperature setter of your own reality, the path will always, miraculously, self-correct.
The detours don't matter.
The detours become entirely irrelevant when you realize the destination was never a physical location or a financial number, but a state of being.
I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought. Think about the physical space you are sitting in right at this exact moment.
Take a look around.
Look at the walls around you. Listen to the subtle sounds of your current environment. If your mind is truly the ultimate, uncontested architect of your daily experience, what happens tomorrow morning when you wake up and you finally completely stop trying to endlessly, exhaustingly renovate the outside world?
What changes?
What happens when you put down the heavy hammer, you drop the blueprints of struggle, and instead you simply take a comfortable seat in the magnificent, expansive mansion of your own consciousness? Who could you become if you woke up tomorrow and truly realized in the very core of your being that you already hold all the keys?